Have you ever played God? Held the earth in your hands, formed lands, dug seas? Well, I can teach you how with these 4 tips on world building. I'm Peter, and this is D&D with me. Hello, Dungeoneers. It's me, Peter. I'm a bald, bearded man here to talk to you about D&D. Not like there's not enough of those on YouTube. So what is world building? World building is just that. You're building a world. You're constructing a world from nothing into something. Kind of like J.R.R. Tolkien did with Middle-earth. I almost forgot the name. How dare I? This is not something I suggest for the novice DM here. Don't be like me. Don't start your first campaign and build a whole world because you watched Critical Role and you thought it was so cool that Matthew Mercer was able to create such an in-depth world. Let me tell you something. It takes a lot of time. I'm currently stuck doing double work because I have to be one step ahead of my players creating the places that they're going to, because I suck at planning. Although I must say it is pretty rewarding to see my players go through a world that I completely created on my own. But what comes along with building a world? You have to think about the gods that created it, the people that inhabit it, the continents that are on it, if there is more than one continent, the kingdoms on that continent, the shops within the towns, the people who run the shops, the beggars on the street, the goblins in the cave, the grubs the goblins eat, the food that the grubs eat. It goes on and on. So it might seem daunting, but you don't need to create the whole universe off the bat. I'm going to give you a few tips on how to start off slow and easy and kind of stay one step ahead of your party. So let's dive in and start to build a world. So my first tip to you is don't overindulge. Start off small. Think about the gods who created the world. Doesn't have to be a whole pantheon. You can think of maybe one good, one bad, or just one god that created the world. Create a name for it, obviously. Or doesn't even have to have a name. This could be a newly discovered planet. Now, what do you need in a world? You need something for your players to interact with. But you have to establish, is this a newly created world or has it been populated for centuries? Think about that, because that's what you'll be basing your campaign around. Are these going to be like the Wild West and they're going to be discovering and creating settlements as they go along? Or will this be a world that's been established for centuries with well thought out borders and rules and ruling kingdoms? When I first created Aslos, which is the world my campaigns take place in, I just started with building one town and the major metropolis that the town that the players started in supplied wood to. That's it. I created Burkton and I created Ormkirk. Ormkirk was the metropolis and Burkton was smack dab in the middle of a forest, and all they did was they supplied lumber to the town. All I started with was one town and one metropolis. My players didn't need to know anything else other than that. All they cared about was the town that they were going into. So as I said, start small, start with one town. Figure out the name of the town, figure out who's in it, figure out what vendors they have. Is it going to be a well-off town with multiple vendors, or is it going to be like a podunk town with only one general store and they all got rope? Think about where the people meet. Do they meet in a town hall? Do they meet in a upturned boat that they've turned into a meeting area? Do they meet in the town square? This is stuff you want to think about for when your players eventually start going into the town and asking questions. And also, this is a great time to relate back to my NPC video that I just recently made, where you're going to want to be populating the world with the NPCs you created with my help. Don't forget to make me an NPC in your campaigns. And lastly, you want to think, is there an issue in the town? Why are your players even there? Is there a cave full of bandits that have been terrorizing the town? Are there goblins that have been stealing vegetables in the middle of the night? When you're starting out your first campaign and you're starting out your first session, you kind of want to have the precursor built into that first world. That little thread that they can start pulling at to unveil the major story. And think about how the players can be introduced to this in the town. They could be sitting in the bar and all of a sudden someone bursts through the door and they have a knife in their back. Or they've been finding that the bandits have been kidnapping the kids in the town because they're turning them into super mages. I don't know, spoiler for The Boys. I recently just started watching The Boys, so. Although that'd be a cool campaign idea, super mages. like baby super mages. That sounds amazing. And my final tip, build session by session. Create where the players are going in the surrounding area. Establish small connections within those sessions, for instance, someone that came from the previous town, or someone from the character's backstories that just happens to be in the town. I know this is a little bit more into session prep, which we'll get into a little bit later, but I'm going to show you notes from my previous session to kind of give you an idea. This was from a new campaign where the players started off at level 2 and were introduced to a different part of Aslos they've never been to before. So, I can show you the town we developed, I can show you the session notes, and it kind of gives you an idea of where to go. So, without further ado, let's go to the internet, shall we? Okay, here we are back in my handy dandy Dungeons & Dragons folder on my drive. This was the start of Campaign 2. These are new characters that are being introduced into Aslos, so we have the name of the session. I like to give my names a little flavor. We have the names of the characters that are being in and kind of how I'm going to introduce them. They have the outskirts of the town where they were starting, which was their current location. Some NPCs that they could have talked to, any possible rewards that they were going to find. Rewards also can just be information, by the way. You could have the Athersby Hamlet Center, which is a likely location that they're going to be meeting people. There was a likely location, which was the Tilled Farmer, which was a tavern, and a town hall on the nearby location. The well, and the wood that they were to go into. And to kind of give you an idea of a town, this was the first town I ever created, Burkton. This is where they started Campaign 1's adventure. There are updates here. The town's becoming more prosperous. Someone's building a brothel on there. But we have the population, the government, the current council on there, the defense, the commerce, the places of worship. And then we have a list of all the inns and taverns. The thing is, there was only one inn when they first started out here, and there was only one merchant. But now that the town's built up a little bit and become a little more prosperous, I've added in more things. More people have been wanting to come to the town. And that's what you want to think about when you're world building. You want to create a world that is interesting and developing along with the players. Well, Dungeoneers, that's it for me. While world building can be incredibly stressful, it can also be incredibly rewarding to see your players run around in a world you created. Just remember, don't overindulge in the world creation. Start off with just a few gods, the name of the world, start small, create a town. Figure out who's in the town, where the conflict is, and what the players can do in the town and who they can speak to. At least have an idea of the start of the campaign story and where you want it to go. Place that initial thread for the players to pull to get the rest of the story started. And lastly, build session by session. Be one step ahead of the players and think about where they're going to go. Do you have any other ideas when it comes to world building? Drop them in the comments below, let me know, because I need them. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe. You can also follow me at DNDWme on Instagram. Alright, that's it from me. Out.